Okay, very cool. Now we have Drupal installed. So let's orient ourselves with the Drupal interface and terminology. Right now we are not logged in because I wanted you to see the difference of being logged in and not logged in. So let's go ahead and log in. The first thing you'll notice is now at the top of the screen is an administrative toolbar. This is what we're going to be covering in this video. We're pretty much just going to start from the left and continue going on, and we will learn what each of these do, what's inside them, and the power that they give you to customize your Drupal website. So let's go ahead and start with the dashboard. The way I look at the dashboard is it's like a bird's eye, customizable on a per user basis view of your website. It's customizable, and you can continue to add functionality to it as you grow your website. Let's look at what it looks like on a stock installation of Drupal. Let's customize dashboard by clicking here. And now the dashboard is a drag and drop interface where you can add new functionality to it. So for instance, we may want to be able to see in our dashboard who's new to our website. We might want a quick search form to be able to get around in our website, and we may want to see all the most recent comments posted on the website. Then we'll just hit the done button and we'll see that this is now a different looking dashboard and it's customized to our needs. But always remember that as your site grows and you begin to add more functionality to it, you will have options of adding more things to your dashboard. So next up, let's talk about how to create and find content by going here to content. Okay, so the content tab of our administration bar is basically where we get to the meat of our website. It's where all the posts go to. If you have blogs, it's where all your blog posts will go to. It's basically everything that people are publishing and adding to your site that really doesn't have anything to do with the functionality of your site. You'll notice that we already have a way of finding content and adding content in the upper left here of our administration bar. We are now looking at the Find Content section where you have lots of options of trying to find your content. Since we're just starting out, we don't have any content yet. We will start creating some later on in this video, but you can kind of see that you can sort and find things based on a status, based on a type of content. You can look at things whether they're published, unpublished, lots of options for finding content. Things are sortable, and it's just basically your go-to place when you're trying to find something. Why would you want to try to find something? Well, maybe you want to delete it, maybe you want to edit it, maybe you want to unpublish it. You'll also notice as part of the interface here that in some sections we have tabs here in the upper right-hand corner that actually make so that this section of content has other things to look at. There are actually sometimes even sub-tabs that I will show you when we come across them. Notice here in content you are also able to look at comments. When you build out a website, you also have the ability to allow users to leave comments on your content. Here, because it is also content, technically a comment is, you can also see all of the comments, and you have ways of organizing this just like you do your content. I know, content, comments, everything's getting a little crazy here, but just know that here in content is where you find and add stuff to your website. And I use the word stuff because Drupal websites can be doing anything people want to do with them. That stuff could be a video, that stuff may be pictures, it may be a blog, it just may be text, who knows. But whatever it is, you're going to find it here in content. Later on, in structure, we're going to discuss how we go about making different types of content. So structure isn't really just about different types of content. Really the structure section here is almost like the bones to a skeleton. It's kind of how you manage everything that makes up your content, and also how it's laid out and used on your website. Everything from blocks, which inside blocks is pretty much just how things are laid out inside your website. We'll go deeper into blocks later on in this series. Structure also works with content types, which we also, pretty much almost everything in this we get deeper in this series. So we're just going to briefly cover this. Content types are different types of contents, from blogs to press releases to news stories. Menus. Menus are how you allow people to navigate through your website. You can have, multiples and minis and different types of menus within your site. You can have sidebar menus, top menus, footer menus, and this is pretty much where you control all your menus and what is inside those menus. And then there's taxonomy, which is a way of kind of bringing it all together to organize this content with tags or terms. All of this is done inside structure. But although structure is kind of how your site is built, it is not how your site looks, and that is where appearance comes into play. So structure was kind of like the skeleton that holds your whole site together and how it comes together. Appearance is how it looks. Under appearance is where we manage what are called themes. Drupal uses themes to change how the site looks. So you can have different themes for different parts of your site, or just your entire website is based on one theme. You can create themes, you can download themes and install them, and that's all managed here under appearance. Later on in this series we will talk about how you install a theme, but here is just kind of a brief overview to show you that Drupal does come with a few themes right off the bat that you could choose from. It's also where you can choose to set a administrative theme versus just the theme that viewers see as they're looking at your website. Here you can also see there is another tab where you can also change settings of themes. Here we see those sub-tabs I was warning you about, so just be aware that these will come about, and this is where you can change different things about the appearance of your website. But besides appearance, now we have to start managing the users, or people that use our website. Okay, so here in the People tab is where you manage basically all the users that have anything to do with your website. Anything as simple as a user that came, signed up, and they're just a generic user that you gave permissions to maybe leave comments on stuff that you post, or anything up to administrators or even the master user. Here's where you come to manage all of that, from adding a user to adjusting their permissions. As we will get a lot deeper into permissions and everything later on in this series, but anything to do with permissions and people is all done here in the People tab. It's also where you can come and try to find users. So if a certain user is asking, oh, well, something's not right, what's my role? And at one point you have a lot of users, you can start to filter down the list of these users. So if you wanted to find a user based on a certain permission that they have, or based on a certain role that they're given, all this is done here where you're able to filter this grid down here to this criteria. So that's where everything is taken care of when it comes to people and users of your website. So next up, let's learn about modules. So modules. This is, in my opinion, modules is where Drupal can make the magic happen. Modules they're basically like plugins that hundreds and thousands of developers are out there making modules to plug into your Drupal website to give you functionality that it A, doesn't have from the get-go, or B, just things that you need that other users may not want to use. So, I mean, modules out there are anything from calendars to, bringing in YouTube videos, to bringing in, just about anything you can think of. There's more than likely a module out there. Again, later in this series, we're going to talk about where maybe you can go find modules on Drupal.org or other resources, and we'll go about learning how to install a module. Just pay attention to that. On the modules page is where you start to plug things into your website to expand its functionality. We also have a tab that not just lists the modules, but the ability to uninstall certain modules. So that's the tabs in here. The modules page also, as you install modules, will sometimes give you quick links to adjust permissions, which is in the People tab, under there, or as well as configure the module. But besides configuring it here, next up is the configuration tab, where we can get deeper into configuring our site, not just modules, but the site itself. Okay, the configurations tab. Basically, as its name is, this is where you configure most of your website. Now, by configure, it's kind of like, the ons and offs or the yes and nos of a lot of the things that you do in your website. As you begin to grow your website and you begin to add modules, most of the modules configuration will go here. Some of them won't have configurations at all, and very little of them may put something underneath structure. But most of them are here. So as you start to use your website and grow your website and you think to yourself, something's not working right, or why don't I see that, or what's going on here, make sure that you continue to keep checking on your configurations. We're not going to go into everything in configurations because there's a lot of stuff in here, but we're just going to go over some of the basics of things that you may need to know as you're beginning this site building series. A big important one is text formats. Now, as you have content on your website and people are allowed to publish content, as they type in what they're publishing, this is basically what allows them what they can and cannot type in. Not necessarily the content itself, but what's allowed. So here's where you can stop somebody from putting, let's say, you can use a filtered HTML. So this won't allow users to put a lot of HTML in it because that might be dangerous. There's full HTML, which, as you can see, only the administrator role is allowed to use. Or you can make so when someone's putting something in, it can just be plain text. So all they can do is just type. You can also add different text formats and modify these formats and configure them. For instance, under filtered HTML, if you configure this, you'll see that we've got a list of HTML tags that are allowed to be used. Well, it doesn't make much sense. Maybe we also want to allow a paragraph tag. So notice we were able to configure a lot of stuff here as well. So hence the reasons why we're in the configurations tab. So text formats are where people are typing in content into your website. What text formats do is kind of stop and allow and not allow certain things inside that. Another thing we might want to take a look at as we're in here is something called image styles. Now, as you start to build out your website and start to add things that use images, image styles is a way of kind of almost modifying those images on the fly. The most common thing you would probably do is resize that image. So let's say you have a press release, which is something we're going to be using later in this website. If you have a press release and someone posts an image, you may want to make sure that when someone views the press release, they only see that image as a thumbnail. So here's where you can go ahead and start managing image styles, and this can get pretty cool, and you can start doing a lot of cool things with this stuff. And the greatest thing is it does it on the fly, so you don't have to tell your users, oh, don't forget you got to go and resize your images to only be 400 by 400 and this and that and whatever. This page basically gives Drupal the power to do that for you. So that's image styles under configuration. Another thing we're going to talk about here is kind of some generics that you also set for your website, region stuff like date and time. It's pretty important to make sure that you set date and times, but it's also where it gives you formats for date and times. So you can add how, if dates are shown to your website, you want to show when the press release was done. This is where you can set formats up here in the tabs. You can add new formats and modify formats and all of that of different ways of displaying date and time. Okay, so back to the configuration tab. One last thing I want to cover in here is something I mentioned during the installation of Drupal, that the stuff we were entering was something you can always change, and that's where we do it, here in configuration under site information. This is the stuff that we entered when we first were installing Drupal, and as you can see, you can come in here and change things. If you need to change your site name or the email address that you chose, let's say you were just using a generic one and now you have one for your domain and you need to make sure that's the one for your site, well, it's all modifiable here in the configuration section under the site information. So in a nutshell, we learned that to configure your website, we go to configuration. And just as a reminder, the more modules you add, the bigger this page becomes and the more options and things you can configure. It's always a great go-to place if something doesn't seem like it's quite right, probably because something might need to be configured. Next up, we're going to start learning about reports. All right, one of the final things we're going to cover here in the orientation to the Drupal 7 interface is the reports section. The reports section is basically exactly what it says. It's where reports are generated. You get a couple stock reports, like top access denied errors, 404 errors, top search phrases, recent log messages. Log messages could be just about anything that's going on with your website. So if there's things that are wrong, a good place to check to figure out maybe what is wrong, the log messages will help you out. But the most important one for us right now underneath this report section is the status report. It's basically the overall health of your Drupal 7 website. So in the status report, it basically is giving you a lot of information about your site, but it's also what it does is give you information about things that need to be updated or something's not right. Notice right now there's one that's in yellow. It's basically telling me, okay, well, update notifications are not enabled, so that might be something I want to take care of. Sometimes there might be something in here in red because you just forgot to do something, and that's very important that it get done or else something's not going to work. So basically you want to see just about everything be green on this page, and definitely do not want any red parts of this page. This was the status report under reports. So that's pretty much the overall interface in a nutshell. You have an admin bar that gets you to pretty much everything that you need to get to for your website. Now, two other things I'm going to mention here. One is that your name is obviously here as the logged in user. If you clicked on that, that's just a quick way of getting to your user page. Another thing is that this gray bar is actually a shortcuts bar that you can modify on a user basis. So each user can have a set of shortcuts. What the shortcuts are good for is if there's common tasks that you're performing and they're deep inside some of these menus and you don't want to have to keep clicking and clicking and clicking, you could create a shortcut for that. A very good one that you might want to put in your shortcuts. Here under performance, there's this clear all caches. As you're doing a lot of stuff to your website, it's caching things to make things faster. Well, you need to clear that cache sometimes to check on things and see, well, is it stuck in cache or am I just not seeing it? So instead of having to go to configurations and performance, let's just go ahead and notice that there's this plus symbol here next to performance. Let's just go ahead and add this to our shortcuts bar. There we go. Now it's part of our shortcuts bar. You'll also notice that there's this edit shortcuts link. This brings us to what you also saw in configuration under shortcuts. Same location, sort of, just a quicker way of getting to this type of stuff. Notice we're under edit shortcuts. We've got this list of links and sets. Here's where we can kind of start to modify some of the stuff, rearrange them. Let's say we want our performance to be in the far left of our shortcuts bar. There we go. Now we got performance. Another great thing that you can kind of do is you can have sets. What sets do for you is basically give you, let's say you want a shortcut bar for content creation. You want a shortcut bar for administration. You could, your imagination is basically what you want to do here, how you want to speed up how you interact with your website. So you can constantly be changing out what bar is showing depending on what tasks you're doing for the day. So I guess in a nutshell, let's cover this all back up. We've learned about our dashboard, which is kind of a bird's eye view of our website that is very customizable. We learned about content. This is where you find and add content. It's where you can search for different things, statuses of content, authors of content. We learned about the structure of the website and blocks and content types and all these things that are under structure that kind of help build your site out. We learned about the appearance, which is using themes to help make your site look cool. People, which is basically where we manage our users, add users, tweak what users can and cannot do. Modules or plugins that we add to our Drupal site to help grow it and its functionality and what it can do for us, where we can configure all this cool stuff that we've added to our website, where we get reports about stuff on our website. We learned about the shortcuts bar. Okay, and then we also have a help section. The help section is a great place to go to start learning some of the Drupal terminology. It'll definitely help you move around the website. If you hear other people mentioning things and you're not sure what they are, this is a great place to find things that you did not know about when it comes to Drupal 7. So far we have now learned and oriented ourselves with the Drupal 7 interface as part of our site building with Drupal 7.